Hey, what's up? Just want to thank you guys for watching our channel. Please hit that subscribe button.
In film sessions, and I think you might remember, like I try to spend a lot of time not just saying this is a bad shot, but saying what could we have gotten had we maintained our dribble or, moved it one more time. Like, so I always try to show where the other options are. And then in player development, I think that's one of the things that we're always trying to do is like, what happens when you maintain your dribble? What happens when, you're faced with this situation and the other things that we can do? I think when you get in trouble with an efficient offense is when everybody feels that they can come in and take these tough twos. Well, you might be able to take more of them than, I don't know, somebody else that you play with because you made them at a higher level, or you were run off the line, or you were put in more situations where this was going to naturally happen. But one thing with a lot of younger players, when they come in, they're like, Coach, that's my shot. I made a living off that shot. I said, oh, really? Let's go back and look. In college, you shot it at 34%. That's not much of a living, and you're not going to make a living here. So what are we going to do when we get to that situation now? We got to give you a second dribble in the paint so you have an outlet to create and make something else happen, and obviously we got to keep working on your threes. So it's like you can't just tell them not to, and you can't just take it away. Right. That's a safety blanket for a lot of people. I don't know what it is, JJ. There's like a mentality. Joe Boylan and I talk about this all the time. To be able to dribble and create your own shot is something that every feels really, really good about, whether it goes in or not. But to stand there and miss a wide open catch and shoot three, that feels devastating. So there's some sort of like mental kind of battle we're fighting that people want to be able to dribble and create their own shot.
Yeah, I think there's always pushback for any player when you try to put them in a box.
Yes.
Right? You're allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. This is what we want you to do. And it's like, well, I want to grow as a player.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to grow. And you bring up Anthony Davis. Like I remember, you're right, on film sessions, there were times where you'd show a specific contested two early in the clock, 16, 17 on the clock, no ball reversal. And it's like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But then if you have a guy like Brandon Ingram, you're like, I've got to give this guy specifically a little bit of leeway on shot selection. Anthony Edwards is another example, but also show him like, hey, dude, if you do this 10 to 20% more, all of a sudden, instead of scoring 22 a game, you're scoring 26 a game. Mm-hmm. If you get to the line two more times, all of a sudden you're scoring now 28 a game, right? It's those things. Like the guys are so good. If there's improvement from those type of guys on the margins, well, that elevates everything. How do you approach how you want to play versus the personnel you have? Because you're talking about the circumstances in Europe where you were essentially forced to play a certain way, and that brought you success. In the NBA, as a head coach, you can have some influence probably on the type of people that the front office brings in. But ultimately, to have success in the league, right, you've got to tailor how you want to play to your personnel. And I'll give you an example. Like, I remember my year with you and Alvin. It was a lot of random. And I like playing that way. I thrive playing that way. Because I'm smart. And I can.
And you move well without the ball.
I move well without the ball. I can make adjustments. I mean, I remember we used to run that 21 action, and every time we got in the bonus, I would run into the guy guarding the ball, and I'd flail my arms, and I'd get to the free throw line. Mm-hmm. And it's like, great. I know I'm going to get 2 points a game just out of our offense because of that randomness of 21 action, which, we would flow into. There was no call, right? I'm just like, I have the freedom to do this. But we're also playing with young guys. And I remember having a conversation with Griff after the season, and I just remember thinking like, hey, some of these guys, like, I think would do better if there was structure. And then we kind of took it to an extreme following that. And that didn't work either. And then with you, like, you get to the situation where you're now the head coach, and you get to, this is how we're going to play. But you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got Karl-Anthony Towns. Then the following season, they bring in Rudy. So you're constantly having to adjust this like basic concept of how do we want to play offensively. And of course, Gobert changes the paradigm defensively. But how do you sort of approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's like, it's literally what we've been kind of morphing through at the moment right here. So first of all, you got to nail the high notes. Like, to be an efficient offense, you still have to, get to the right shots. Now, the distribution of the shots are different. Like the year that I first went to New Orleans when we had DeMarcus and Anthony Davis, like we were elite at the rim and we were elite at getting to the free throw line. But we didn't shoot a ton of threes and we didn't make a ton of threes. But because we played with enough pace and we were able to like live at the rim and benefit from the offensive rebounds and the free throw. So that was one way that we could have an efficient offense. When you were there, we were probably way more of a high volume 3-point team, right? Played with a lot of pace, randomness, shot a lot of threes. Yeah, and I agree probably with certain players, they always need structure. And I think there's been players that we've not been able to maximize in certain systems that we've had because of that. I believe right now as we head into this next year, which is hopefully a complete season with, a Cat and Rudy, we need more structure just because like the structure is going to provide us the right spacing for the two bigs to kind of stay out of each other's way. I think at times they got into each other's way. Offensively, we weren't great. We were pretty medium last year as a result of, we didn't take enough threes probably. We were a pretty low volume 3-point shooting team here. So we got to get some guys to take a few more threes. Some of that was D'Angelo was a little bit like what we talked about earlier. He's good in the mid range. He likes to pull up, but out of those pick and roll situations, we're not creating enough of the right shots, perhaps. So lots of little things we can do, but I think structure will help us do that. But as long as we're like trying to get to the right shots, I think that's the biggest thing. Like the rest of it is you have to coach it into existence. It's like anything else. Like I say all the time, these analytics, they're guides. They're not gods, JJ. Like we're not doing this stuff just because the numbers say it. Like we have to figure out what's best for our team. And if we're within a certain paradigm, we're going to be okay. And maybe we take a few more mid-range than like some other teams that I'd had ideally. But we have to augment that with like get into the line more or living on the offensive glass. Like last year, we weren't very good on the offensive glass. There's no reason we shouldn't have been. We should have been better on the offensive glass. But we decided to punt offensive rebounding to be good in transition. And with the two bigs on the floor, we weren't. So we didn't benefit from either, Right. So then actually I have a report here just like sifting through, all the things that we got to do better next year. And it's like, it's pretty interesting when you do these self-examinations, like how to connect the pieces from what from one team to another, And that's where I feel confident going into this season coming up, because I think we've learned a lot from our personnel grouping last year, even though like the sample size was chopped up, it gives us a good place,
First of all, I'm glad you said that the analytics are a guide, not a god.
Yeah.
Because I do believe there is a balance that you have to find. I've talked about this with you and I've mentioned it before on the podcast. Like towards the end of my career, I had to find that balance. And truthfully, if I look back at the beginning of my career, I wish I had played for coaches that were like, hey, high volume threes. We want you taking 8 to 10 threes a game. I had coaches like that at the end of my career, right? Yeah. I might not be 17th all time. I might be in the top 10. You never know.